it kind of a user manual for your brain, right?
Oh, that's exciting.
So it is. They would say that all behavior and change and things like that are really at the unconscious level.
Okay.
You might not consider it that way, but they are. Like if you even were to brush your teeth, if you started following the pattern of the exact steps and things,
Okay.
or if that's when something's reached your unconscious, and that then becomes a pattern, and that's why it takes a while to change your patterns. You know, they say 21 days to change a habit or whatever. So there are other areas where your neurolinguistics, how your language and how your mind works together, so that it also affects your spirit and your emotions.
Okay.
So if you were to hear a song come on the radio, then that brings you back to a time when you were almost just right when you heard the song, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so there are times where this is extremely important because there's times where you might want to change that. You know, if you had this is great for things like phobias and PTSD, any type of depression, you know, things that are really bring you back to that point. Sometimes it's what you might hear, sometimes it's something you might see, sometimes it's something you might smell, and what those cause as far as triggers, you know. And then there's also times you want to set those. So you want to feel good when, as soon as you look at your show, you want to be sitting here and you get in that great place, you know. So, so that's just a very small aspect.
Okay.
I went down this path because in the past, I really was studying more of a spiritual, just intuition route. And I kind of wanted to add some more, a little bit more linear logistical sides to the science, of how that works.
That's so great, actually, because I'm sort of similar, where I do love the world of the spirit and you know, prayer and the faith-based world, but then at the same time, I like also things to make sense too. So, you know, I've studied NLP a little bit as well. I think you're a master practitioner, and I'm not quite as cool as he is. Okay. But it's interesting. So let's say somebody who might be watching in the audience. Let's say they are a lion in the cubicle. Okay. So they are in their job where they are just going through the motions, doing exactly what they're supposed to do. By society's standards, but they're maybe feeling the inner roar a little bit, and they're feeling that vibrational rumble and just kind of that dissatisfaction and that festering. What would be like the top 3 things of advice that you might tell them? Not necessarily that they would quit their job and change everything, but just to kind of, you know, help them listen to the roar and do something about it. Like, what are the top 3 action steps?
Let's see, the top 3, I would say, you know, number 1, realize wherever you're at is where you're supposed to be at right now, and that's part of your journey, and to be happy with where you're at.
It's really good, actually.
Really important to be happy with where you're at, and to know that you're going to take those learnings and apply that to the next chapter in your life.
Okay.
So
that.
Number 1 would be that. The number 2 would be, what do you want? And that seems like a a funny question, right? But most people, whether it's their cubicle job or a relationship or anything, is they will continue to tell what they don't want. I don't want this kind of life. I don't want to have a cubicle. I don't want to be in a 9-to-5 job. I don't want to be in this type of relationship with this type of person. And what I think happens, for whatever reason, whatever thing it is in the world we live in, whatever happens is that they keep getting more of that. Okay, so as they keep saying what they don't want, you continue to get more of that. And actually, when you're looking at how the unconscious works, the unconscious is symbolic and it doesn't understand knots. So as soon as I tell you, don't think of a blue elephant, it is impossible for it to not do it.
That's so true. I just thought of one right now.
So if I say it's okay not to think of a pink elephant, it's quick. It's just like that, right? So it's really important to find out what you want.
Right.
And then start to write that down. Now you can use the contrast of what you don't want. So you know, you can say, okay, well, I know I don't want this kind of job. Okay, so then start to write down what you do want, and sometimes you'll be surprised that takes a little work, you know, because you're really having to start this process of identifying. It's almost scary in a way, you know. So that would be number 2, and then number 3 would be know how to put yourself into the right place to talk to your unconscious, which is very
that's
often.
interesting.
It is interesting,
Yeah.
but it's very often asking the right questions and doing the right work, right?
Okay.
So sometimes that could be, for some people, meditation, prayer, yoga. For some people, that can be asking the hows, visualization processes, things that get your unconscious to know, what to do next.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different tricks when it comes to how the unconscious works. One of my favorite phrases, if you're ever talking to someone and they say, "Oh, I don't know," to the answer. And it's great. You can say, "Okay, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would it be?" And immediately it's like,
Right.
all of the good stuff comes out, right?
Right.
And it's getting that kind of stuff. That's the inside. That's the inner word. That's
Yeah.
speaking from the heart. And so, that would be the top 3 things.
Okay, I love that. So the first one was be happy with where you are. There's always learning from where you are. Second one was know what you want and look within to figure that fun stuff out. And then the third one was tips and tricks to help your mind help you, essentially. Is that right?
Right.
I love that.
So, hypnosis, things like that those are the things that you can use to sort of have the tips and tricks to get that stuff in there.
And you know how to do that.
I do.
Gosh, that's so cool.
It is cool. You are falling asleep. Just kidding. Doesn't quite work that way. We actually go into a hypnotic trance several times a day without
Really?
ever realizing it. Yeah. I mean, when you first start waking up, when you're driving, you're actually in a trance. You just don't even, it's that state where.
That's a little scary.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I've gotten so many tickets. Just kidding. No, I'm not. Oh my goodness. Okay, good. So tell me, so for you, in your career, in your life, what is the most important thing to you, or your highest value?
My absolute highest value is freedom.
Freedom. It's a big one.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it's funny when I was, there's certain tools you use, as I was saying, tips and tricks. There's certain
Right.
tools you use to elicit what your highest values are. Your highest value in your family, your highest value with your career, your highest value in a relationship, whatever that means. And it was funny when I was eliciting my values, the first one that came up was freedom. And I think like the third one was integrity.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that can't be good. Like, integrity should be first. But the funny thing is that that's what we do when we're trying to please society and
Yeah.
not please you,
Right.
right? So we start to say, here's what I want to say,
Right.
and then it's like, oh no, what will people think of me if freedom is my highest value?
Right,
What
exactly.
do people think? Oh, selfish. Selfish sounds bad. That sounds like a very bad word, right? We're taught
Right.
to think that's a very bad word.
Yeah.
When really taking care of yourself is absolutely, the most important thing. You can't
Yeah.
help others unless your cup, can't help others unless your cup is full first.
Right.
So, but there's all those beliefs of what that means. There's language too, like you think that there's some negative connotation when you hear responsibility. Someone says, Shireen, you need to take responsibility for that. And really, when you look at the root word and you look at the where that comes from, it simply is the ability to respond. So
That's true.
that's a very different meaning when you feel
I like
that. It's
that.
like,
Yeah, it feels much better.
yeah, next time someone says take responsibility, say, do I have the ability to respond? And you feel a little different when
Yeah.
you
Exactly. As opposed to feeling like I was going to get in trouble in school.
Right.
I felt
or
that for a
all
second
kinds
there.
of things.
Yeah.
Anybody who says you need to take responsibility. There's all of these language patterns that we use all the time.
Yeah.
Anytime you hear the needs, anytime you hear the shoulds.
Right.
I've heard other
Yeah.
friends when I've described that, they'll start to change it to you oughta. Like
Yeah.
they'll find other words. But when you
That's
hear
funny.
those, they do something with when you're communicating with someone.
Yeah.
Words like however or but.
Yeah.
Basically, that just eliminates everything you said before the but.
Gotcha.
When you're communicating with someone.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
not always so important. Just kidding.
Yeah. I was like, good one. All right. So when you think about, because basically it sounds like your industry is personal development.
Yeah, I would consider that the
Okay.
industry that would fall into.
Okay. Okay, and so in the industry of personal development, what kind of shifts do you see happening with where things are going?
I see a continued direction that needs to be questioned when it comes to the real empowerment of it. So, right, so like it seems kind of like an oxymoron because it's like, well, this is personal development, wouldn't it,
Right.
you know, want to be empowering?
Yeah.
But I think that we are getting to a point where we now really intuitively feel the authenticity of someone.
Yeah.
We really feel the
Sure.
truth of someone. And now that we're really there's a real desire to have personal development not just be somebody else's seminar that you go to, and not
Right.
just be sold one more thing on their level of
Yeah.
path. You know, it needs to come back to the reason. First of all, they really should have classified it as like not self-help, right? That's like a kind of like a not a very empowering word, right? Who came up with that needed to have read their first self-help book, I guess. Right. So we could start with that.
Yeah.
But I think it needs some real changes with the authenticity of you know, the speakers and things. I mean, it's kind of a category that people are like, personal development, does that mean I need help with something? Do I need to go see
Right.
somebody? You know,
Right.
It already has a negative connotation
Right.
to it.
Yeah, like there must be something wrong with you if you need to
Right.
fix something about you.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
And you know, I don't know why there would be anything more important than learning and growing
So
and
true.
expanding.
Yeah.
You know, somehow, because of how we were taught, we think that school is over at a certain age,
Yeah.
and then, I don't know, we kick back on and watch something on television and eat popcorn and we're
Yeah.
done. But I mean, how great is it that that's not what we should be doing?
Right.
You know, when we get into a book, when we get into a topic, when we start learning new things, that's when we feel, you know, we feel energetic, we feel energized.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely sort of identify with that because I was, like I said, born and raised, got to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. And since I didn't want to be those things, I sort of just shut down internally. I didn't listen to my inner lion, and I just did whatever I was supposed to do. Like, I don't want to upset my mom, you know, so let me just do what I'm supposed to do, and everyone will be happy. And then so I went through high school, I went through college, and I wanted to major in dance, but I didn't. I majored in communications because I thought it'd be more normal, you know, so, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I got my first job, and when I was in my first job, I really sort of had, I mean, maybe it was the inner lion rumble, you know, but I basically had a quarter-life crisis. And what's interesting about that was that during the entire educational process, I was completely disengaged. I did not enjoy learning. I was just kind of there because I was supposed to be. And because if you keep having X amount of units, you get X amount of money and you just do what you're supposed to do. But when I graduated and I had my quarter-life crisis trauma, it was almost like I came awake, like my inner lion really came out. And then that's when I became obsessed with learning. Like exactly what you're saying of how cool is it that we get to continuously learn and open a new book and learn a new idea. Like when I sort of came awake to the thought of learning for myself, as opposed to like, oh, this is what my mom wants or what, you know, what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
All of a sudden I was like a geek. I couldn't stop.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like kind of like the Pandora's box, right? It's like, okay, now I've
Exactly.
opened it. And you know, I think I would call that probably a midlife celebration. is what
Oh, I
would call
like that.
Right? Like, so like a crisis doesn't always sound as good, but these, you know, these words mean something. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, it is when you can celebrate the fact that you're now doing something for yourself
Yeah.
instead of doing something for someone else.
Exactly.
And that's where the shoulds and the needs and the things when people are telling you, you need to read this book, you should do this in
Right.
your relationship, you should.
Right.
And it's when you can sort of start to not take things personally
Yeah.
and know, look, all I need to know is that I'm doing what I need to do.
Right.
And that's ultimately, I'm on the right path if I'm doing that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not always easy. Like, you know, you sort of, it's something that you need to remember, and it kind of takes work. It takes practice. And I think that we'll begin to see more of this actually taught in schools and our education system.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the education system we have now, you know, they have the highest intentions.
Right.
Right. The highest intentions are there. and, notice I didn't say but,
Yeah.
right? So, and they can do a lot better when it comes to some of this, personal growth.
Right. So, when you're thinking about how to help someone, I know we've talked before about staying present and that kind of a thing. So I'm kind of wondering, like, when you're helping someone to stay present, what are different ways that they can do that?
I'm glad you brought this question up because there's multiple different ways to do that, and the first one is recognizing when you're not being present,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that typically is the most important too,
Right.
because you need to get yourself back on track
Yeah.
when you're doing that. The reason you want to stay present is because then you can start to pay attention to people,
Right.
but also to the synchronicities going on, the coincidences going on, the things going on that you might want to be listening to. It's like
Right.
it's like suddenly somebody else shows up in your life, and it's like, what a coincidence. When you're present, you will start to take advantage of those opportunities more.
Right.
The way you can do that when you're following your thoughts, it's very impossible to be depressed unless you're thinking about the past. And
That's good.
and it's not possible to have anxiety unless you're thinking about the future. Right? That's
So
the whole
true.
idea of anxiety.
That's
You're
amazing, yeah.
anxious, and so the first thing is to recognize, oh, well, I'm really feeling all of this. I'm so anxious right now. I'm feeling anxiety.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
Now it means that I'm thinking something. I'm thinking fear in the future. Fear. We call fear in our mastermind group false evidence appearing real. Right?
Yeah.
And really, when you can recognize, then you can say, okay, now what tools do I need to use to get myself back to present?
Right.
I'm enjoying this moment now. I can go to gratitude for other things that I'm very thankful for.
Yeah.
I can see that right now, in this exact moment, I have everything I need.
Right.
In this exact moment, the rent due, that's 2 weeks away.
Right.
Who knows what happens between now and 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Right? And when you can start to live in
Yeah.
that place and be so present and live in the now, I think it was a Deepak Chopra book I read that I loved. I loved it. It said that is why they call the present a gift, right?
Yeah.
It's like a present. I liked it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go with it. Come on.
Love it.
Go with it.
Yes.
So things I use would certainly be, yoga.
Okay.
For me, I think recognizing that we have a mind-body connection with that. Yoga's
good.
great. Yoga's great for me. And I'm not someone who I would have ever thought I'd be doing any yoga pose. Let me just tell you. And then I think having good friends, empowering friends,
Yeah.
and relationships that actually are very supportive of you, and they'll even remind you and say, you keep talking about your story,
Yeah.
and then your story keeps coming back in your life,
Right.
And if you have friends like that that can speak from their heart,
Right.
and not necessarily, when I started my journey towards empowerment, it might sound bad, but I had to cut the fat,
Right.
You can find out how you do that when, have you ever met somebody or hung out with somebody that you just being around them just drained you of energy?
Yes.
Right? Okay, so.
It's happened.
So hopefully it's not me right now, by the way.
This guy.
but and then you meet people that do the opposite for you. That they just seeing them just brings you up. Your energy.
Right.
You're just already feeling good, and
Exactly.
you haven't even really hung out with them. When you start to notice things like that, you can really use that as indicators too.
Right.
Like, is this the people I need to be surrounding myself, right?
Exactly.
The birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
Stuff, right. So you need to be surrounding yourself and your pride
Right.
with other lions.
I love that. So this is really interesting because having you on the show, I thought we were kind of talking about the, sort of the mind and the spirit portion, but it almost sounds like we've talked about every part of the human experience through this NLP stuff. We've talked about the mind, we've talked about the body through the mind-body connection, we've talked about the spirit, and we've talked about relationship being sort of a support of this movement. So you're just like all the tricks in one, you know?
It turns out that they all kind of go together.
They do. They do.
So it is. It's a great study. It's a great to like look at and say,
Yeah.
well, you know, this is kind of important stuff, right? Like I want to be
Exactly.
learning these things.
Right.
I truly believe 100% that there are a number of universal laws and things that we live in.
Right.
We don't always see them. It's not so obvious,
Right.
but they're there in our lives, and that's why we say words like miracle and coincidence we have these words to try and explain the unexplainable.
Right.
And I think as we begin to study these things more and more, we'll be able to find a lot more real truth to that.
I love that. So for the audience members who are watching right now and they want a little bit more of Mr. Inner Lion Mentor, where can they find you?
You can go to www.innerlion.com.
Beautiful. I see it on the screen, so I hope you guys do too. He's definitely wonderful and can help you unleash the inner lion, and make sure that it comes out as loudly and as valiant as possible. Chad, I just want to thank you so much for being here. You have been a wealth of wisdom for us. It's been awesome. And if you want to find more of Chad, definitely check him out at www.innerlion.com. For those of you who do love the Shireen Show and you want to support us, you will get a lovely copy of my book, The Coolest Quote Book Ever, by calling the network now and donating, because this is a nonprofit network and we need as much support as possible. So thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate your presence and your time, and we will catch you next time on The Shireen Show, where we talk about mind, body, spirit, and relationship. See you there.